Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you were enjoying Booker T and the MGs. I sure was. I almost hated to stop and start here. But welcome to the Data Services Peer Exchange webinar. And thank you so much for choosing to spend some of your valuable time with us today. Before we start, I got a little housekeeping got to do. So let's take you to a little bit of housekeeping. Throughout today's webinar, you'll be muted. Don't worry, while we can't hear you, we would still like your participation. There's a QA feature located at the bottom of your screen that we will be monitoring. Please use this to ask any questions you have throughout the webinar. We'll address as many questions as we can, and any questions that we are not able to get to will be compiled, and all registered participants will receive an email in about a week. We will also use the chat feature during the open discussion portion of this webinar. That is also located at the bottom of your screen. During the open session, we encourage you to speak or ask those questions that were just way too long to type. So just in the chat, please type unmute me during the open session, and you will be acknowledged and unmuted one at a time. But wait, there's more. We are also going to use a polling feature. So keep an eye out for polling questions to pop up on your screen. Here's an example. Please answer the following question. What best describes the area of your agency in which you work? Please go ahead and answer that question. Okay, that should be about there. Let's see if the results should pop up. There we go. As you can see, we've got a lot of bid letting and award people here. That's great. But we have a good smattering of people here. We'll be definitely interested in seeing some of what the others hold for us. So thank you for that. And then finally, I just want to say, we understand you're all using Zoom. We're all using Zoom, and we all have varying internet connections, which may bring about challenges, right? So don't worry if you get dropped, if your internet connection is having problems. We'll provide a recording of this webinar sometime next week as well. Okay, so let's begin. First off, I'd like to introduce you to your tour guides today, Jeff Hisem and Jim Ferguson. I'm Jim Ferguson. Jeff is a senior strategy analyst in our business development area, and he'll do most of the navigating today, most of the talking. That's his specialty. And I'm the senior director of AASHTO analysis and support, and I will just try to help steer the bus. So why are we here? That's always a great question, right? A good place to start. Well, agencies are constantly making decisions and need to be able to get a handle on all their data to create, make, and validate those decisions. What we see is agencies unfamiliar with how to take advantage of the data they have available. They often lack the time, expertise, and support to provide actionable deliverables in a timely and efficient manner. You will see this confirmed in our survey results today later in this webinar. We believe that our expertise, Infotech's, we can be a data as a service provider and produce tangible data services to fit your needs. Hey, this isn't new to us, okay? We've been doing this since the beginning of Infotech for over 40 years. So really what we feel like it's time again to raise awareness to the services we can provide our customers to help them realize the full value and potential of the data they are currently collecting. Bottom line here is that we'd like to sit down with you and learn about what your needs are and how we can fulfill those needs. So what are our objectives today for today's meeting? Well, first, we'll talk a little bit about our relationship with AASHTO, and we'll also talk about the difference between the AASHTO Data Analytics Project and Infotech Data Services. We know we've got some questions around that. We will also review the results from the survey we sent out, and we certainly appreciate the people who participated in that. We will validate some common data-related services that you brought up as well as we. We'll have an open discussion that includes some Q&A and hopefully some live speakers And then in the end, we'll recap and talk about next steps. So first off, our relationship with AASHTO. For 35 years, plus years actually, Infotech has been the official contractor and trusted advisor for AASHTOware project. Through this relationship, we've been helping transportation agencies manage their construction contract progress from conceptual cost estimate to closeout of construction project and all the data points in between. We understand your ecosystem, including those big touch points such as financials, program and project management, and some of those other heavy hitters. This partnership with AASHTO provides the opportunity for agencies to explore their data analysis and reporting needs using service units also. As I said earlier, providing data services to the DOT community is not new to us. To see what we currently offer, please visit the AASHTOwareproject.org website. A data services section can be found under project services. We are currently updating that information to include results of this outreach. So look for announcements once we get that task completed. With that, I'm going to turn this webinar over to Mr. Hisem, and you'll be in great hands, I promise.
Thanks, Jim. And I guess thank you for saying that talking is my specialty. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Hopefully, during this webinar, you all will find some useful things. So the first thing I want to talk about today are the differences between AASHTOware project data analytics and our proposed data services effort. There's been some concern that this new effort would in some way compete with or negatively affect the data analytics project. This couldn't be further from the truth. Both efforts address data activities, but they're not doing the same thing. So this table highlights the differences between these two areas, and then we'll go through the data analytics side first. Data analytics is an AASHTOware project. And I guess technically I should say it's an AASHTOware project. The scheduled completion date for this is April of 2023. Its progress is guided by a technical review team of representatives from the 14 agencies who funded it. The project has specific deliverables, and when it's completed, those deliverables will be available to all AASHTOware licensees. After the project completion, data analytics will continue to evolve over time as all other AASHTOware project modules have, with new features and upgraded capabilities. Now, data services, on the other hand, are provided by Infotech directly to one or more agencies who have expressed an interest in that data service. The service would be provided through direct contract with Infotech or the use of AASHTOware service units. This could be a one-time service like a report or a health check, or it could be an ongoing service like an annual cost index. One thing I want to note here is that a data service created for one or more agencies could potentially evolve into a feature in data analytics down the road. That would be subject to agency and AASHTO approval, of course, if they are interested in doing that. So before going any further, if you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please enter them in the Q&A or the chat areas, and we'll address them later in the open discussion section. So the next thing I'd like to talk about are the results of the data services survey that we sent out. And if you can, there we go. We received 22 responses to the survey, and 17 people from 13 different agencies indicated an interest in participating in this webinar. A third of the respondents characterized themselves as being analysts, with the remainder coming from materials, auditing, civil rights, engineering, and construction. So there was a wide variety of people represented in the survey. The crux of the survey was in the first 4 questions. The 5th question just asked for contact information for those wanting to attend the webinar. We wanted to keep the survey brief to get a better idea of your needs for data services within the agencies. So in question number 1, we asked what areas of the agency performed data analysis and reporting. Looking at the responses of often and sometimes, we were happy to see these positive returns take place in all 4 agency areas that we identified. The highest percentage was in the estimation area at more than 86%. But even the lowest percentage of positive responses was 61% for civil rights and labor. We believe that this is a great indicator of real interest in using the data within the agency. The second question wanted to know if your agency had an interest in doing more analysis in these or other areas. 19 of the 22 responses indicated yes. I'm thinking if it was more than that, you would think that we had planted that, but those were the actual answers. In question number 3, we asked you to identify the agency obstacles to increasing your amount of data analysis and reporting. Although all the listed obstacles got some votes, the top 2 by far were lack of time and lack of expertise within the agency, at 77% and 68% respectively. Both of those obstacles can be addressed by data services. And then question 4 was, what are the most common data-related reports and questions your department asks that you are unable to answer quickly? Off the top, we were very pleased to get that we got 16 responses to this question. Sometimes open-ended questions yield a much lower response rate. In the interest of time, I separated and consolidated the similar responses into the categories that you see on this slide. I'm only going to comment on a few of the responses here. If there's one you would like to ask about or discuss, please be prepared to do so during the open discussion. So in the estimation area, it wasn't a big surprise. Cost trends and indices received the most comments. Most everyone does these things, but there are many approaches to arriving at the ultimate conclusion. A group of agencies might decide to pool their ideas and come to a mutual approach to address these issues in a data service in the future. Forecasting costs can even be more challenging. I'm sure your planners would appreciate a consistent approach to determining where costs are heading in order to determine spending power for future programs. In the pre-construction and bidding area, the first bullet is a great example of how data generated outside of a specific area of the agency could be used by a different area to enhance their work. And then I'll just tell you, I was allowed to tell one story, so this is my story. In 2009 and 10, there was a federal transportation stimulus package that doled out an additional $26 billion for quote unquote shovel-ready projects. Many agencies had large future planned projects that were just waiting for funding, and the stimulus gave them an opportunity to sell those projects earlier. A concern in many agencies was that such a large influx of money into the program would raise prices. One agency worked with Infotech to examine contractors' backlogs to determine maybe the best times to sell those projects to get the best value for the money they had. In these times, with rumors of another transportation stimulus package coming, these are the kind of data activities and data services that could maximize the value of whatever money is available for our highways. In the construction and materials area, I'll be discussing the construction items in more detail in the next slide, but just wanted to point out that data generated from material areas of Ashtabula project can provide a wealth of information for monitoring test results and materials used to build our highways. There was no surprise market areas, vendor analysis, and collusion detection was mentioned in this, since it's very difficult to get quick answers to those questions. Typically, this activity yields no quick answers because of the amount of data that needs to be collected and analyzed. Management reports. Well, these are two examples of the kind of management reports you might receive. They kind of represent both ends of the spectrum. On the one side, there's the age-old question, how much does a mile of road cost? I'm sure you have all heard that. It's an extremely difficult thing to answer when you don't know what the road is that they're talking about. The second item is a good example of the kind of reports that are required by FHWA and could certainly have the potential to be provided through a data service contract. So before leaving this slide, I just wanted to say it's very important to recognize within your agency that all areas of an agency need to know where to go for data-related help. It's very important that your agency communicates that to all areas so that they can come to you and get the help that they need. So this completes the 4 questions in the survey. But before I move on, please take note that some of the items you all identified had stars next to them. Okay. Before putting this webinar together, the Infotech Data Services team identified a number of potential data service activities for agencies ranging from relatively small in scope to very large ones. Today, I'll be showing you a portion of those ideas. Some of them are existing services currently available from Infotech, and some of them are from ideas for new offerings. They're almost all relatively small in scale. This first group of items were identified by all of you in the survey and also by the data services team when we were putting together our list of services. Cost trends in indexing service has already been previously discussed, and indexing is already an available service. Analysis of awarded bids versus actual costs of projects may yield some insight to bidding patterns and dealing with contractors in the field. 2 more items here deal with the change order process. The first addresses standard reports and statistics that might come out of the construction side. The second one is titled Effective Change Orders on Bids. I think maybe a better title for that might be Relationship Between Change Orders and Bid Prices. It would examine how contractors might unbalance their bids in anticipation of change orders and how that might affect the contract, and actually how it might even affect who the low bidder was. The market areas vendor analysis and collusion detection item was discussed in the previous slide and is very large in scope. This, of course, has been a service that's been offered by Infotech for years. Management reports have also been discussed and is pretty open-ended with regard to the information management is interested in seeing. The next slide contains additional service ideas from the Infotech team and are all relatively small in terms of magnitude. I'm only going to discuss one of these services, but wanted you all to know that all prospective services identified here today will be sent to you along with the answers to your questions after the close of the webinar. So the second service from the bottom is items that typically are used to unbalance bids. We believe it could be an insightful exercise, not only to identify problem items, but also to look at contractors' bidding tendencies as a group and individually. It could aid agencies in preparing their bidding documents and help you to anticipate problems when bids are submitted. So that's the end of today's list of items that we have identified as potential data activities for your agencies. And again, this entire list will be sent to you after the webinar is concluded. With that, we're going to go ahead and have some open discussion. I know I've talked to you just about enough today. And we'd really like to hear your thoughts on these data service ideas. So we're going to start the open discussion with a segment of and a series of 5 polling questions. Then we'll move on to your questions and comments and finish with a final question for you. So let's bring up the first polling question. We'll give you a little bit of time to answer that. So after all of you answer, the results will pop up, and I just want to let you know we'll be including all of the polling questions and responses in our email to you after the webinar is concluded. So you don't have to worry about the results disappearing here. Okay, I think we've had enough time to answer that question. Let's see what the results are. Okay, it looks like cost trends and effective change orders are the 2 highest ones, and I'm glad to see that there weren't that many that said none of above. We'll go ahead and close that and go to the second of 5. And this has to do with the current cost index process. Okay, let's see what kind of results we may have had here. Okay, varied answers, and that's all good. Gives us an opportunity to talk to you all about that. Let's go to the third question. Okay, and our responses. Good. Next question. All right, and the answer to that. Good, it's good to see that some monitoring has occurred. The final of these 5 questions is next. And when this one is answered, we'll move to the open discussion where we will answer some questions and give you an opportunity to speak. All right. Glad to see that no one believes there's a correlation. All right, that ends the polling questions for now. We will have one at the end of our open discussion, and then we'll be wrapping up. So I guess the first thing, the first order of business is Jim, to ask you if we have any questions.
Well, Jeff, we do. First off, it's like a game show, right? First
Yeah.
off, if my agency was interested in a change order analysis or other construction related analysis, doesn't matter whether we are still on site manager, but in the middle of implementing construction and materials.
Well, quite honestly, that would have to do with which area you are. Obviously, if you're fully engaged with construction and materials, the effort to pull that data and begin the data services request would be much easier to do. But if you are still using, what's the other one?
Site manager.
Yes, thank you very much. You're still using Site Manager. We can certainly pull that data. If you're using both, we can pull from both. But obviously, when you have to pull from more than one source, it would be a little bit involved. But absolutely, whether you use one or the other or both of those, we could provide data services in that regard. Yes.
Right. Thank you. Next question is, we might be interested sooner rather than later in getting started with some unbalanced bidding type of analysis. How do you get started with us? That's the first part of the question. And are there any requirements gathering or discovery required first in order to give us an estimated cost for analysis? Or do you have estimated prices now?
Well, I would say that giving you a price now would be a dangerous thing because we don't know how involved that can be. A lot of times when you come up with some ideas about what you want to analyze as you go into it, you bring up more questions. But the question was, how do we go about doing that? You would yeah, how do you get started? Well, the first thing would be to contact Infotech. And at the end of this, we'll be showing you an email address for data services at infotech.com. You can contact Jim or myself. We can set up a meeting with you and your agency to have some initial discussions about exactly what you're looking for. One thing to think about is the questions and the data services that we might provide for an individual state would probably be useful for other states. If you know of a state or two that might have the same kind of interest that you do, we can certainly have a meeting with 2 or 3 or 4 states that have a common interest. When it comes down to pricing, which you asked a little bit about, obviously, if in the spirit of AASHTO and doing things collaboratively, if you have 2 or 3 other agencies that are interested in the same kind of service that you are, you might be able to split the cost of that 3 or 4 different ways. So that would be of benefit not only to you, but to us, because we would be able to help out a group of agencies at one time, and the agencies would get the value of sharing not only the ideas and the questions that go into it, but the cost.
I think you've actually answered another question that was under here, which was you mentioned coordinating with other agencies on some potential analysis. Can you please explain that further?
Well, I know at one time some agencies got together and sort of had a peer exchange and talked about areas that they might be interested in certain types of analysis. That could take place with our help if you're interested, or if you know of specific states that might be interested in some of the services that you're looking at. You can contact them directly and then come to us. This is pretty open-ended. We're certainly willing and able to help you out in that degree. You might give us a call and say, we want to look at bid tab analysis, and we want to know if there are any other states. We can put a call out to agencies and see if there is an interest. So that would be another way to do that.
For DSS BAMS training forthcoming, will it be virtual or in person? And what is the depth of this training?
So the answer is yes, it would be. And that sort of depends on when all this will take place. It is our hope that we get back to in-person type training. Zoom has been, very helpful to all of us, and actually, I don't know how we would have done our business without it, but we still feel that face-to-face meetings on things like this would be the best way to go. Was there a second part to that, Jim?
Yeah, just the depth of the training, Jeff.
Well, I would say, DSS training can be, if you're looking at DSS and all the data that's within DSS, the depth of it would depend on the kind of things that you're trying to get out of it. It could be, real deep as far as that goes. Collusion detection type analysis can go for months, even longer than that. But market areas and bidding patterns and things like that, certainly a much shorter time, a week or so.
Okay. Next question is what kind of follows that in is what types of analysis has Infotech performed for most DOTs, or performed most for DOTs?
Well, for any of you that have been part of the AASHTO community for any amount of time, you'll know that market analysis and collusion detection type things have been going on actually since Infotech started and AASHTO started with this software. So that very much is the largest part of services that we have provided. I worked for the state of Ohio for 36 years, and we had a data analytics team that had, I'm going to say off the top of my head, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different separate contracts with Infotech to do different data services. We actually started out with a request to Infotech to do the market analysis training part 2. So that particular training session was a syllabus that was set up by Infotech so that we could, explore further market analyses. After that, we began to think about specific data concerns that we had, and so we would go to AASHTO, to Infotech, and ask them to put together sort of a training course along the lines of those concerns. And usually they lasted about a week. We used, in Ohio, we were able to use our service units, and we found that that was a real good way to fund those kind of activities. I can't speak specifically for other agencies, but I know that other agencies have used their services. One, I can. Infotech has been doing cost indexes for the New Jersey Department of Transportation now for a couple of years. So that is one service that I know that we have provided, and I know that would be available to other agencies also. Now you're getting into the part where I like to talk.
Well, and you answered a couple of questions in there, so you're knocking off some questions along the way. The next question is, can data services be provided if the data is not coming from AASHTO project?
Well, I would say that we would always say yes. Okay, it's a matter of trying to figure out where your data resides, what kind of formats it is in, and what kind of access that we would be able to have to it. But yes, I think that certainly could happen. It would require a little bit more effort, obviously. because the Ashtaware project data is in one place, and certainly Infotech understands how that database is put together. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to access other data within your agency with your permission and your help.
Thank you, Jeff. We've got time for one more question, and appreciate the questions that have been posted for sure. And you've actually answered this question, but it's good to repeat it again. And it's, can we use service units or direct contract for these services?
Yes, absolutely, both. And that sort of depends on the agency, and that can change within an agency over time. It doesn't make any difference to us. We have done it both ways. I think for many agencies, service units seem to be the cleanest and certainly the quickest way to get those kind of things accomplished.
Well, thank you, Jeff. That's all the time we have for questions. And if any other questions come in, like we've said, we will compile and we will get the answers to those questions, and we'll get them out to you as soon as possible. I believe right now we're going to do that last polling question, right, Jeff?
Right. We had no one that wanted to speak up. I'm surprised.
Can you believe it? You know, I would have jumped on that if we had it. I had no unmute me, so I'm surprised.
Okay, we'll give everybody one last chance to be unmuted so that they can let us know what they're thinking today. Okay. If not, we'll go ahead and ask our final polling question. And if we could put that up on the board, there it is.
Let's give them just a little bit of extra time on this one.
Okay.
I think we're good.
All righty.
There we go.
I like that peer exchange idea.
Yes, definitely. That is good.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we'll move on to a recap.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, that was a quick recap.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. So just to recap what we've talked about today, I talked about the differences between Ashtaware Project Data Analytics and Infotech Data Services. I hope that was a good explanation and everybody understands that. They certainly are related to the use of data, but they do serve different purposes. Then we moved on to the survey, and I would say there were 4 points based on the 4 questions that we were able to take away from that. First of all, many areas in the agency can benefit from data services. I was glad to see that you all felt that way, and to a high degree. Agencies would like to do more than they are doing now. When you're getting 80%, 86% of the people saying that they'd like to do more, that's a good sign. The largest obstacles to doing this work are lack of time within the agency and expertise. And I suppose if we had put COVID on there, that probably would have been one of the answers also. There are already several agency ideas for services, and many of them coincided with things that the data services team came up with. We had a number of data service ideas. We showed you the ones that were smaller, relatively speaking. We have other ideas with regard to data services that we will be willing to share with anybody that would like to listen. And certainly we are happy to get any new ideas from you. So some already exist of our data services. Many others are new. and most of them are relatively small in scope. That is the recap for this webinar.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
And so with that, that is really the end of our webinar today. I appreciate you all joining. I'd let you know that a recording of this webinar and answers to today's questions, polling results, and list of data service ideas discussed in the webinar will be made available to you as soon as possible. I will remind you, in some of those questions, we talked about services and even some of maybe the cost of those services. I would again encourage you to go look out at the AshtaWare website under project services and data services. And as I said, we'll be updating the list that's out there of services, but it does give a range of service units and where we can. And so that maybe if there's some budgetary concerns you want to look at, a lot of times it does say varies, and obviously it varies because we need to sit down with you first to understand the depth of what you're asking. So if your agency or a group of agencies are interested in talking to us about specific data services, please contact us at the address listed here, which is dataservices@infotech.com. Also, as we close out, please be on the lookout for an email with a survey that will help us improve the future of webinars that we do. We really rely on your input for information to keep improving in this area. So I really appreciate it if you take the time to hit the couple of questions on that. And other than that, thank you so much for your time today. It is greatly appreciated. And I hope the rest of your day goes well. Thank you and goodbye.